Today, I want to share 7 tips about taking care of your seeds early on in the beginning, not making some of the early seed starting mistakes some of us fall into, and continually mess up as we continue to grow, because mistakes do happen. So as we've talked about in countless videos, starting your seeds too early can be a problem. Now there's a time and a place as to when to start your seeds early. For instance, vine crops that you're going to want to grow and grow and grow and have a nice big plant as soon as that last frost date has passed, it's a good time to start that early. Woody stemmed herbs that usually take a long time to germinate and then furthermore take forever to grow to something that's going to be harvestable. Sometimes you're going to start a woody stem herb at least a full year before it's actually ready to harvest. So being able to plant those out, up pot those as well, never really a bad time to start something like that, especially on a high value crop like herbs, in which most people do not even have enough when it comes time to the farmer's markets. Top seller, high dollar, really look into it. But when it comes to things like quick succession plantings, I'm talking about lettuce, some varieties of kale, different cut flowers, and maybe some of your faster herbs like basil. If you plant those out right now and that frost date, if you take a look at that frost date calendar and it's way before that's going to be ready to be planted into the soil, and it's not time to direct seed as well, you're going to have indoor plants in seed starts that's going to get very leggy, very skinny. Some of these crops are not meant to be up potted. There's no reason to take the time and effort in lettuce to up pot that. It just doesn't make any sense. Carrots, beets, anything that's going to be directly sowed and it's well before the frost date, you're not looking at those calendars, you're just going to be wasting seeds, time, and get pretty frustrated. The second mistake we see a lot is getting the cheapest possible bag good or digging dirt up from your backyard. It's going to be depleted of nutrients. It's going to be super compactful. It may or may not be the right ratio or mix. Oftentimes there's not anything like a coco coir or a peat moss, something to help retain that soil. Let me tell you about how that works. Coco coir, peat moss, cellular structure to cellular structure, compare that to something like clay or sand. When water hits those strands that you see whenever you really get in there and pull it apart, those strands actually swell, and that swelling is what holds the water in. But if you're taking a look at things that help the soil drain, perlite, vermiculite, sand, anything like that, there's nothing to kind of hold that on there, and that's why it's great for drainage, but not so great for retention. And so if you're just digging up soil in your backyard and you're planting directly in that, more often than not, it's just very stale and full of weeds, and it's not going to be a great start to the year. So go ahead and get a premium potting soil mix or seed starting mix. You're going to want to find that some of those need to be screened a little bit. It's really worth the effort not to have big chunks of pine bark or mulch or anything like that in there that sometimes are more associated with filling up a raised bed mix, for instance, is not a great seed starting mix. So really check those labels, be prepared to screen, and spend the money up front. You're saving so much money by planting your own seeds versus buying transplants that it's worth the investment in the soil. The third tip is planting the seeds too deep. Now, a good rule of thumb is however wide the seed is to plant 2 to 3 times that deep. A lot of times with like lettuce or beets or something really fine, mixing that up with vermiculite or sand or something really tight like that can help evenly distribute that if you're not planting one-on-one and not using pelleted seeds. And that may be something you find helpful. So crops like lettuce, you can really just plant right directly on there and just cover with a little vermiculite or perlite, as long as it's pretty fine. They just need a little dusting just to block the light for the first couple of days before they start putting out their roots. So behind me on this wall, you can see the storage in which there's a little bit of greenhouse plastic and a little bit of shade that's eventually going to come down to these rolls in which we'll pull different sizes off for some of our smaller greenhouses. Number 4 is inconsistent watering. The great thing about Bootstrap Farmers trays and pots and everything that we have, it's all predicated on bottom watering. So once the pot or cell or insert is inside of a 1020 and you can lift up, and this even goes for microgreens, you can lift up the top, water underneath, and as long as you have something, remember what we said a couple of minutes ago about coco coir or the peat moss, something to wick up and retain the water without holding it where it's saturated, that's where that bottom watering really shines. It wicks it up and keeps it nice and consistent without the need to water from the top, which is going to cause spottings on the leaves, some mold, some fungal issues. And while we're talking about that, remember that your humidity domes are only to be on there once germination happens. As soon as you start seeing sprouts, Take that cover off. Number 5 thing to look out for is make sure that these seedlings get enough light. 14 to 16 hours a day is not uncommon, and there is basically a grow light or an LED light for every budget. Sometimes a higher value crop is going to require a lot more intensity, and that's something you may want to invest in. But for a lot of people, just the cheaper LEDs or a shop light is more than enough, as long as the light is positioned close enough to the actual sprouts. A lot of folks you'll see have like a rope system or an adjustable shelf, so as the plants grow, the light can stay at the same level. Like as the plants come up, the lights can come up, and as you replant or succession plant, you can drop the light back down. So you'll see that a lot. So behind me is a greenhouse kit that is going to be letting a lot of light hit the plants and transplants whenever they're planted out. And I wish I could tell you where this hoop house is going to go and what's going to be grown under it, but that's why we rely on you and your comments below to let us know, hey, we use your stuff, we're in this state, we're in this territory, this is what we're growing. I love to hear these stories from you, and you never know if we're out and about traveling, I may just stop by and see you sometime, but I won't be able to unless you let me know where you're at. So the 6th tip that we have is not forgetting to do the hardening off process. Just think about this. Your seeds are inside, they're under nice lights, there's no wind, there's no crazy temperature fluctuations because it's likely in a temperature controlled room. And then all of a sudden, bam, you hit it with that spring cold, and it's just a shock to the plants. So taking your plants out gradually at easy parts of the day, right before noon, let the sun come up, let everything kind of get to where it's going to be for the day. I would not put this out with a humidity dome. Don't falsely think that that's a mini greenhouse. What you're going to do is you're going to heat that humidity dome up air real fast. And at the same time, likely if you're putting the tray on the ground, maybe on cement, maybe on the ground, and there's going to be a wild temperature fluctuation, and that's not good for the plants. So ideally, you can take your seedlings out into the tray, you walk it out, you put it, you let it get some natural sunlight for a little bit, you let it have a nice little breeze to kind of help build up those stems, and it's going to build up the cell walls within the plants. And so when you finally do transplant those out, after they're taken back inside and they're sleeping well overnight, just like a human or an animal that we're in charge of taking care of, you have given those plants a little bit of tough love, and then whenever they're planted outside, you're going to have less transplant shock. And the 7th mistake that's really easy to miss is having poor air circulation within the area that you're starting your seeds. So think about a couple things. Number 1, if you're starting a lot of lettuce, for instance, like in a 200 cell or a 128 cell, you have 128 or 200 plants in this very dense little situation, and as they grow up, those middle plants, they're going to get like crushed down with the weight of the leaves all around them. And what that may do is it's going to prevent that air circulation from drying out those roots a little bit on top. It may hold a little bit more water in the middle than on the sides, and you may have some inconsistencies. Putting a small fan, we have microgreen fans that you can purchase, or if you just want to use a small box fan or circular fan, just something to move the air around. It also evens out the temperature around your grow operation. So think about the lights, think about the watering. If there's a stale environment, different little microclimates, even within a tray, could affect the consistency of the seeds overall. So a little bit of circulation, not like a hard blowing or anything like that, but just a gentle air movement. It's going to help even out the soil. It's going to help give you better seeds. It's also going to help knock down things like those little gnats that you see sometimes whenever the water stands a little bit too much. Gnats don't like moving air, so keeping that off there is a little bit of IPM as well, integrated pest management, to help keep that pest pressure down. It's also super annoying to have a bunch of gnats in your grow area. So a little bit of air goes a long way from starting your seeds. So true to Bootstrap Farmer, we also have this cardboard box situation in which some of the shade cloth, these are the boxes it's going to go into. We made this rack. We're making stuff here at our warehouse just like you're doing on the farm, so we continue to get and understand the need for innovation and building things on your own. So if you have something like this on your farm, I keep asking for comments because I want to know what's going on out there. So keep them coming. Thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed some of the behind the scenes here at our cut room at our warehouse. We'll see you in the next video.